Yo, what's up, everybody? Cage here, and this is a look at some theory planning and a build that I've been cooking up for last Epoch. I'm calling it the Dragoon Lancer Falconer build. Now, this is probably going to be a bit of a longer video, so of course there'll be chapters for you to skip around. But before we get into any of that, I just gotta say right out the gate, when it comes to last Epoch and just ARPGs in general, I'm not like super masterful of knowledge and building and all that stuff. However, I have seen a lot of videos, especially with last Epoch, about in-game stuff. Seen a lot of in-game build guides and watched videos about how to build for in-game and whatnot. So I have a little bit of an idea of what I'm doing with this build. However, I'm going to be ignoring at least 50% of that. It's like 50% this is stuff you should do for late game, and 50% of I'm just having fun. So there's a great chance that this build is definitely not min-maxed. It's it might not be super viable late game, but it looks like a lot of fun. Now, if you're here to gain a lot of very knowledgeable amount of information about last Epoch, with it dropping here soon, and what you should be building and doing for late game, I highly recommend you go check out I believe his name's Aaron. His channel's Action RPG, so go check him out. He does some really amazing videos about gearing, what you should be looking for, how to craft, and all tons of stuff of a lot of ARPGs, but especially last Epoch, so I highly recommend checking that out. So when I was looking at the Falconer, I imagined what this build would be when I was going to play it, because of course I've been playing last Epoch for almost 400 hours now, but most of that's been just playing alts. I haven't really stuck to one character to super late game. You know, I've gotten to empowered monos and stuff like that, and I've messed around a little bit with two different builds that I think one's almost 90 and the other's like 70, but usually the fun I have is the build diversity of last Epoch, which is absolutely fantastic, and I've been in love with it. So those 400 hours I've mostly spent in getting about 1,000 character levels, which is not a joke. I found out that there was a maximum amount of characters you could create. I don't know if you knew that, at least on the live characters. That's 20, by the way, and I have somewhere between 23 to 24 characters, and 1,000 is not a joke. I think I have 970 character levels between the 23 24. So I enjoy the game. I quite enjoy the game, but I don't have super in-depth in-game knowledge. So just in case you're looking for that kind of stuff, you're probably not going to find it here. Just letting you know. Don't want to disappoint you later. But with the Falconer, I imagined when I was reading about it and all this stuff that I was going to go bow, stay far back, shoot bows, your Falcon goes and kill stuff. That made a lot of sense to me. But the more that I started looking at skills and passives and stuff like that, I started to be like, there's a lot of stuff that's specifically tailored to spear rogue with the Falconer class mastery. I was like, I kind of want to do that now. And with one ability specifically, we'll get to that here in a second, it literally gives you the jump ability from Final Fantasy as if you were Dragoon. Like, that's pretty cool. Is it super strong late game? No idea. But with the build that I've built up here, it should be fun, to say the least. Now, this build's going to focus on three primary things that fit the skills and the passives of the Falconer. One, obviously, minion damage. Now, I remember reading somewhere, and I'm pretty sure that this is the way it is, because nowhere in the passives does it give you anything like survivability for your pet. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that your pet is invulnerable and cannot take damage, unlike a not Primalist. Fuck. Hold on, let me. No, it is Primalist. Okay. You think I would know? I have 4 or 5 of them. Unlike the Primalist, I don't think you companion, as they call it, can be downed, and you have to revive it. I don't think that that's how it works with the Falcon. I'm pretty sure the Falcon cannot be hurt. So this build is going off the assumption of that, so keep that in mind. So minion damage, just going hard into the minion damage paint. Dodge chance, and crit chance. Now, with dodge chance specifically, I don't know how some of this works in Last Epoch, because no one except for the developers seem to know. I don't think I've found anywhere set in stone what stats truly enemies have. I don't know if they have any kind of higher level ones just ignore a certain percent of dodge chance, or if there's anything like that kind of shady stuff that goes on, because I still think this is a little shady with resistances, just because you have to kind of dig pretty deep to find this with resistances. I mean, I think it's kind of better, and it kind of better than like other ARPGs like D2 or Path of Exile, where, I mean, they at least say it to your face, which is kind of nice, but they'll just be like, oh, you got to a certain part of the game, taking 30% of your resistances. Bye. Like, that feels bad. But you can at least see it and know how to work around it. With Last Epoch, many of you might not know this. Some, quite a handful of you, I imagine, do. Per level that enemies have, at least in the area zone, which is usually the level of the area, it's usually the level of minions and monsters you're fighting. Per level, they penetrate 1% of all your resistances, up to a cap of 75. Nicely enough. So once you're level 75 and you're fighting level 75 things in monoliths and stuff, they pretty much, if you have flat 75% resistance all the way across the board, you actually have 0, because they eat through that. It's a little shady, in my opinion. I feel like that should be a little bit more telegraphed and demonstrated somewhere in big, bold writing somewhere around resistances and whatnot, and not kind of hidden like in small text or deep within the game guide. But there you go. So I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form if there's some kind of coding written in that's like, oh, they have crit avoidance built in, or they have ignore dodge stance built into them at a certain level. The scales up to this much. I wouldn't be even remotely surprised. But from what I've been able to dig, I even looked up the bestiary and, I don't know, Epoch something dot whatever. What I was able to find, and looked up some Reddit posts and stuff talking about deep diving into Last Epoch. For what I've been able to find, it doesn't seem like the enemies, even bosses, have crit avoidance. Even the monolith modification that gives them crit avoidance for a couple maps, even that says they receive crit avoidance. It doesn't say they get increased crit avoidance, which indicates that they already have crit avoidance. It just says they get crit avoidance. They could already have crit avoidance, and that's just a flat add addition on. Who knows? But for what I've been able to find, it doesn't. No stat, no text, no one ever mentions that enemy monsters or bosses have crit avoidance built into their stats. So cross our fingers, let's hope. But with dodging, however, I did find this little post here on Reddit that says dodging in Last Epoch has no entropy. In other words, if you have 70% dodge chance versus a mob, you will always have 70% dodge chance. It doesn't go down or get penalized for anything like if you dodge an attack, your dodge chance for that enemy will not go down or anything. It stays the same way it is. And dodging hit does not count as being hit for certain abilities and whatnot for ward, etc., etc., etc. Which is really cool, because I assumed dodging, how it worked, in this game like it does in many other games, to where it's like you dodge melee attacks. But ranged attacks, spells, can't dodge those. There's no chance to dodge this because it's a different thing. No, anything that hits in this game, melee, ranged, spell, anything, you can dodge it. That's nuts. However, any dot damage you can't dodge whatsoever. So, but they do go on to say it is not in a great spot late game. So we'll see if they're true on that one or not. Dodge is mostly useful to transform into something else. We usually transform it into Glancing Blow as rogues or Endurance Threshold width of the mountain, which I'll show you later in the passages. We do have a way to switch it if all of a sudden Dodge is not doing anything. We can just turn it to Glancing Blow chance, so not a big deal. The problem is it's not a guarantee. You will eventually get hit, and if that was your main defense, tough luck, see you back in town. We do have some other defenses and other stuff, so we should be fine even if we get hit, but we'll talk about that later. It's most efficient versus large packs of mobs. So yeah, so that is what I was able to dig up about dodge, but that is the three major, there we go, bring that back up. 3 major parts of this build: minion damage, crit, dodge. Very fun. Let's start off here by going through the skills to show you what we're going to be doing, which I can now bring in the screen here. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a half and half or if I'm just going to bring me down. I don't know, but you know, because you're already here. You're here, you're already watching. First things first, Flurry. Flurry is like one of my favorite auto attack abilities, and again, we're going with a lance, so keep that in mind. We will be attacking with a lance. It is one of my favorite abilities, whether for ranged, for throwing, for melee, for whatever on the rogue. Flurry is just a wonderful ability. But you can also go with puncture, because a passive that we get later also activates both with flurry and with puncture. But I'll show you that when we get there. So puncture is also a really good choice. It also costs 0 mana. It is not a horrible one. Also, you could also go Cinder Strike and get the blind chance into crit vulnerability chance to make it easier for you to crit through Soot and Ash and Pocket Sand. That is also an option. It's really up to you, but Cinder Strike itself does not scale with any passive points in the Falconer tree, but that is completely up to you and your choice. So for Flurry, obviously going into Adrenaline Rush and Giant Slayer. Adrenaline Rush, every single time you attack, you have a 50% chance to get an Adrenaline Rush stack, up to 4 stacks. Those last for 4 seconds, which increases your damage by 5% and attack speed by 5%, stacking it 4 times at 20% respectively. And for each stack, you get 30% increased damage against bosses, so that means every attack is going to be doing 120, which was 100 more, yeah, 120 more, so 140% increased damage on your Flurry against bosses, which is just super nice. You can get more stacks in there if you want, but since this is a crit build, I really wanted to go off in this crit direction. This one here, every time you hit with Flurry, you get increased attack speed up to 20%, so stacking that with this one means you get 40% increased attack speed. Mixed with that is 45% attack speed, and mixed with a passive in the passive tree, that's additional 30% attack speed, so you're going to be attacking 30% faster. Plus, in a different skill, we'll have the option after using Dive Bomb to gain Fury, which will give us another 20% increased attack speed. So that's why we're not going to have any attack speed on any of our gear in here, because we're going to get around 100% increased attack speed on Flurry. Now with a spear, it does have like -6 attack speed. It is a 0.9694 attack speed weapon, so it is slower because it's two-handed, but still increasing that by 100% is going to be pretty fucking fast. Like, that spear is going to be thrown pretty fucking fast, and factor in how much we're going to be critting later when you start hearing all the crit numbers. That's really nice. Of course, more damage from Flurry, which means we're going to be stacking more damage against bosses and everything. Very nice. Improve Flurry's base crit strike chance by 6%. That's going to be huge later. The spear that we're going to have can have anywhere between 4, 3, we'll go fast, 4, anywhere between 4 to 7% base added crit chance. Base is 5, plus even if it was minimum, which is 4, plus this guaranteed 6, which would be 9, plus 6 is 15. 15% base crit chance that we're going to be multiplying. We're going to be critting a fuck ton with Flurry, which is going to be our main damage source, which is really cool. Crit mult, 4 into that, get the additional 20% crit mult. It's probably not a bad idea, but I do want this heal on crit, which we'll come back to later with the healing per dexterity and all that. That's going to play a big role later on. We'll come back to that. Next, we're going with falconry. Obviously, this summons our falcon for our falcon to do falcon stuff. And it gives us the ability to throw out our falcon to rapidly do hits in a targeted area. Now, it does say here somewhere, yeah, it does say here, and I think that since, you know, obviously the Falconer is not out yet, and the base game, the game is not released, is not dropped yet, that some of this information that we're seeing here might not be 100% accurate. Things might be tweaked before release. Who knows? But it says here that whenever I use a melee attack, will reduce the remaining cooldown on our Falcon strikes, which is where we send out our Falcon ability. But if you look here, it says we don't have a cooldown on it. So I assume the summon. Yeah, but like when you with a companion, when you're playing a primalist, like with Wolf, level 1 you get Wolf. If it's on your bar, you just automatically summon it. So the cooldown would be the activated ability itself, which it says we don't have. Like it does show cooldown for like other abilities, like 4 seconds there, 7 seconds there. It says we don't have one. So, and I looked all around, nothing increases the cooldown of the ability. So it's not like, well, if you increase it, you can then decrease it. Not a single one of these increases the cooldown. It gives a cooldown on that ability. This has a cooldown, but that's Feathered Knives cooldown, and this is Falcon Strike cooldown. So no idea. I assume we'll figure that out. But if it does have a cooldown, reducing it by its remaining percentage of it by 15, or remaining duration by 15%. Excuse me. Every time we attack, which again, almost 100% increased attack speed on that ability. That means it's going to be up all the time. So that's going to be really cool. Obviously, I think Falconer's Journey is just no-brainer. Per level you get, your Falcon gets 1% increased damage and an additional 1% damage per dex. Like, that's just nuts. At level 100, it gets 100% increased damage. That's for 1 point. That's pretty fucking cool. This one, whenever Falcon hits an enemy, it marks them. If I burst that, mark that damage against that on that mark burst, will have 100% increased damage from the damage I do. And whenever I pop a mark for the next 5 seconds, I'm going to receive a 15% movement speed and 15% attack speed. Add that on to the other numbers I just said. That's over 100%. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Also, marking strikes give my Falcon 20% chance for any other damage it does, whether that be from aerial assault, dive bomb, etc., to apply a mark as well, so not just from its base attacks and or Falcon strikes. And whenever I consume that Falconer's mark, it gains additional melee damage equal to a portion of my added melee damage, which is going to be around 150. We'll get to that later, but that's a lot. A percentage of that's going to be pretty nice. Flat added damage, and it lasts for 10 seconds, can stack up to 10 times. That's a lot of extra damage for my Falcon. I like the way that looks. Additional Falcon hits, because why not? And then Hunter Spoils, just 1 point in here. Whenever my Falcon kills an enemy or auto attacks, it just hits a boss with any form of damage. Wording is very important in Last Epoch. I honestly think that the developers of this game played some D&D because their wording is very similar to D&D stuff. They're very specific with the way they word stuff, so you gotta look at the wording specifically here. When your Falcon kills an enemy or hits a boss or rare enemy, hit, auto attack, Falcon strike, aerial assault, dive bomb. If it just hits them with anything, not just falconry, I gain health and mana based off my total attributes, which that number is actually going to be pretty ridiculous, but we'll get to that later. Reduce the cooldown. My highest increase global damage from one of those sources is applied to my Falcon's damage. Really fucking good. My highest crit chance is also added to my Falcon's crit chance by 75%. Very nice. And crit mult as well to help my Falcon crit just a little bit more as I'm critting as well. It'd be really sick stuff. Explosive trap, honestly, you could switch this out with anything else. You could honestly switch this one out with anything else you wanted. I just thought it would be fun to have explosive damage after I saw that I don't have to actually throw out any of the explosive traps if I don't want to. So I thought that'd be really fun. But if you want to go more defensive, shift, smoke bomb, net, all really good options for potentially more dodge stance, more ward, more stacks of certain things like maybe Silver Shroud or Dust Shroud, or etc, etc, etc. There's possibly some better defensive options if you feel like you need to be more defensive, or if you just want to use any other ability, literally any other ability, then I would say Explosive Trap. Feel free to take off. But what I liked was this ability right here. Hold this whenever you hit an enemy with any melee attack, you put an Explosive Trap on them. After 1 second, it will explode, or on enemy death. Wait a second, this might be important here. Hold on. Yeah, so yeah, it'll explode after 1 second, or if an enemy dies. But however, you cannot have more than one trap attached to it. But it has a 1.5 second cooldown, so every like 2 seconds I'm going to be attaching another bomb to someone and they'll be exploding, which would be really cool. But since it says, unless I'm reading this wrong, unless this is written wrong, who knows, attached traps explode after 1 second, ignoring arming time, or when the enemy is attached to dies. I don't really understand the aspect of the rabbit. If the enemy that the explosive trap is attached to hits you, it now attaches to you instead, will not do damage to you, which is nice. Hitting enemy then attaches it back to them without changing the delay before exploding. So that, if I'm reading that right, it will not fuck with the delay before exploding. So therefore, you still only have 1 second before that explodes. Am I reading that right? Additionally, when it explodes, the trap does 30% damage for each time it is passed. That sounds really cool. Within the span of just 1 second, I might attach it to them, they might attach it to me, and I might be able to attach it back before it explodes, right? So I think we'll only get maybe 60% increased damage on that, maybe, if it's a fast enough attacking ability or enemy that's not using abilities and stuff, right? So like, I don't know if it was something like it increased the duration for when it's going to explode by like 1 second every time it gets attached with decreasing returns. So like, you know, you put it on them, they put it on you, and it gets like, okay, it's going to now explode in like 2 seconds. Okay, you put it back on them. Okay, well now it's adding like 0.5 second. Oh, they put it on you now at 0.25, and then after it goes again, then it stops, and that time then explodes. That would make more sense to me. Like, oh, you could actually pass it back and forth with the boss, and then boom, it explodes and does a fuckload of damage. But since it explodes in 1 second, I don't understand the point of this. I would much rather go with this one, which pretty much does the same thing. Prepared demolition. Explosive traps deal more damage in a larger area for each second it existed before it blows up. Now it's only exists for 1 second, right? So that's not very long. However, damage bonus per second 60%. So in that 1 second, it's going to get 60% increased damage in area. I'd rather just do that than play this back and forth game, right? But I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I don't understand it. But anyways, fire resistant shred. It's not going to be a huge thing, but maybe it's bosses that can maybe do something. Larger area, which I think would be cool, mixing these larger areas together. 80% detonation area and 60% 140. It seems like it's going to take out most of the screen, but who knows. Additional trap doesn't really do anything. I'm just getting here to the Falcon part. But if I do want to start chucking these out by hand, which I do have the option to do, I get one more. can do up to 6, so now I get to 7. Pretty cool. Make it cost a little bit less mana. Not really, I just didn't have anything else to put this in. And then whenever one of your explosive traps detonate, the Falcon does 15% more damage for 3 seconds. Why not? And it detonates your Falcon skill, recovering a portion of the remaining cooldown. So I think that would be cool. So again, you can switch out explosive trap with anything. I just think it's fun. Aerial assault, you dash forward and land at a location. Afterwards, your bird will do a burst of damage around it at the target location. A portion of the cooldown is recovered whenever your Falcon hits an enemy. That's a theme in a lot of these abilities. Since we're attacking fast and our pet's attacking, we just want to reduce the cooldown. Caltrops, I'm not sure if I'm going to switch this and or a passive later, because I don't know how much damage Caltrops are going to do, but they do have a 100% chance to bleed and give my Falcon a chance to bleed as well, so that sounds pretty cool. Missing mana recovered. Since I only have 100 mana in this build, not a whole lot, the 6% is just going to pretty much make this cost nothing, so that's kind of cool. And directly using Aerial Assault recovers a portion of the remaining cooldown on Falconry and Dive Bomb. Kind of cool. This one is absolutely ridiculous. Directly using Aerial Assault recovers a portion of your missing health. 50% of our missing health is going to be back, so if we're at half health, that means we get 25% of our health back. That's pretty fucking nuts. On a 4-second cooldown, that's pretty fucking nuts. So I'll put that one out there. So that's going to be some good defensive stuff for us here. For 8 seconds after using an aerial assault, an aerial prowess here, critical strikes dealt by you or your Falcon, we're going to be doing that a lot, BT does, grant you a stack of aerial prowess up to a maximum. Every time we consume these stacks, we gain health and damage per stack to the next ability, which is really nice. On top of that, here's where we're going to get Frenzy. Consuming stacks, we gain Frenzy and Haste for a duration based off the stacks. It gets up to 36. That's a lot of seconds of Haste and Frenzy if we can get all the way up there. Also, if we don't crit, there's a chance to get the buff. If we kill something, there's also a chance to get a buff, which is the stack. Also, while we're moving, we get another 80% dodge rating on what you're going to see later. Really huge. And every time we dodge, we get a stack. Very cool. And whenever we use Ballista, Explosive Trap, or Dive Bomb, which we do not directly use Explosive Trap, we only apply it by attacking, but if we choose to throw one out, it will count as using this. So most of the time it's just going to be when we use Dive Bomb. It will consume my stacks of prowess to do additional damage on that ability. Very cool. And then last but not least, the thing that turns us into a Dragoon, the Dive Bomb. So, your Falcon jumps into the air, lands at a location, doing a high amount of physical damage to enemies in the area. 20 mana, 7-second cooldown, the highest cooldown we have, because most things do not have a cooldown. Unless this has a cooldown. Who knows? I don't know about Falconry yet. So that's really cool. What can make it cooler? Well, reduce the delay. I don't know what the delay is going to be when the time goes up and comes down, but pretty much 75% of that, almost 75% of that is gone. Cool. And does 16% more damage. Very cool. But when you have a spear, if you're wielding a spear, you also leap to the target location when you use Dive Bomb, doing damage. Also now counts as a traversal skill, which is awesome because Aerial Assault is not a traversal skill. Traversal skills, unless they share cooldown. Found that one out with my mage. It's good to know. So this one does count as a traversal skill. You can see that there in the tags. This one does not. So that is totally fine. That this counts as a traversal skill now. And so we're going to jump up in the air with our spear and dive bomb down on people. Depending on what the animation looks like, that sounds like it's going to be really fucking cool. On top of that, whenever it hits an enemy, or at least I don't know if this counts as, this says dive bomb hits, I assume that means either if you're jumping as well. It will add slow stacks, or a slow stack, and has an increased area. Decent. I mean, slow's not like super vital to our build, at least. It can be in some builds, you never know. There's a passive that will make you do more damage if you slow, so you can try to super slow people's attack speed enemies' attack speed and do more damage by that. Could be a valuable build, but that's not what we're going for. But very important, when we hit somebody, we will add crit vulnerability to those enemies. We will add 3 stacks of crit vulnerability to that enemy. 1 stack of crit vulnerability makes enemies 2% more likely to be crit, and removes 10% crit avoidance on that enemy, which again makes me think that they might have some kind of crit avoidance thing on them. Who knows? And I do not know, because I know resistances can go negative and you take additional damage because of that. I don't know if crit vulnerability, if enemies don't have crit vulnerability and you give them negative 30%, because it stacks up to 10 times, so it can be negative 100%. If that means they're 30% more likely to be crit, I doubt it. I doubt it just goes to a flat 0, but who knows? Fuck if I know. But that would be really nice whenever we dive bomb somebody, so like when we're fighting a boss and we're just spamming abilities, constantly dive bomb it off cooldown to make it more likely to be crit, and if it does have any crit avoidance, try to reduce that. Very cool. Talon Blades. This is pretty nice. Dive Bomb and Featherfall hits, which we are going into Featherfall for that. And specifically, Featherfall before my Falcon jumps, so I will jump, but before my Falcon jumps, it will shoot out razor feathers all around it to strike enemies in the large area. And then it will jump after me. So it will shoot out 8 feathers. For every, and this again, the wording is very important here, Dive Bomb and Featherfall hits. Not the hit of Featherfall or Dive Bomb, not the first initial hit, but hits, which means everything and everyone I hit counts as a hit. Grants me a stack of Talon Blade for 18 seconds, which is a long fucking time. And each stack, and as also again, important in the wording here, gives me a stack. Nowhere in here does it say that there's a maximum amount of stacks of Talon Blades. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but I'm guessing there isn't because it doesn't say here, but who knows. Maybe in the game if we hold shift or something it'll be like maximum is, you know, who knows. But each stack increases our crit chance and our crit bolt, which is going to be even crazier because I haven't even factored that into other stuff here. But yeah, we can at least have 5 stacks, that much I do know, because you move faster when we have Gale of Blades, that is. You move faster when you have 5 stacks by 10%. More movement speed, which is going to be super nice when we stack that with other moving speed stuff like the haste from here, which gets 30% movement speed, and right now we have flat 20% movement speed, so it's we're gonna get a lot of movement speed with this build. I think there's something else. Yeah, this also gives me movement speed, 15% movement speed on that, 10% movement speed on that. That's 25. I have a flat 20%, which you'll see later here. So that's like 45%, and when I get hasted, that's another 30%. So we're gonna be like this. From what if everything works the way I'm thinking of, this is gonna be a very like Path of Exile, like zip 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 zip, move around the map kind of build. It's gonna be very fascinating. Other things, Dive Bomb has a shorter cooldown, 10% cooldown recovery speed. That doesn't mean that it takes away 7%. Cooldown recovery works differently, so I don't know what that is, but it's more important to get over to here, which reduces the mana cost by 16, so that means it only costs 4 mana to use Dive Bomb, which is really, really important because we only have 100 mana, and Falconer takes half of our mana to cast, so we need that to not have that. But we do have not have a mana cast, but mana bar, but we do have ways to get mana back, which we'll show here right now. So that's all the skills. That's what we have going with the skills. Try to remember all that, but I will be coming back to reference it from here and there. Now we're going to talk about the passives. Now, one thing I do not like about modern ARPGs, or just kind of the ARPGs in general. I love ARPGs. It's one of my favorite genres of all time. Maybe not my favorite, but at least top 2, top 3, easy. One thing I don't like about, especially about modern ARPGs, is the grocery checklist of defense. It really feels like I understand that bouncing in the RPG is really hard because you don't want it to just be you can't die, you mow over everything in a blaze of glory. There has to be some challenge and some danger, otherwise it's not as exciting. And I get that. I totally get that, because you don't want it to become like a almost arcade like mobile game to where you just mow over everything and you're just this unstoppable, unkillable god, because that gets old fast. It's not very fun. But also you don't want everyone to be like, okay, well, I have to build a pure tank on even a mage, otherwise I fucking die. It's really hard to balance that. I think Last Epoch does okay, but it's like PoE with resistances and spell suppression and you name it. It does have like, make sure you have this or you're going to get one shot, make sure you have this or you're going to get one shot, make sure you have this and you get one shot. So if you look at most build plan or build guides from people who play this game a lot and who know the end game in and out, about 90, it feels like 80 to 90% of your passive points are going to be purely defensive passive points. You gotta make sure you have all your maxed out reses, tons of health, 100% crit avoidance, must have. It's like checklist, gotta make sure I have this, gotta make sure I have this, gotta make sure this, otherwise endgame's not gonna be fun. And that's kind of disappointing to me, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you. That's kind of disappointing to me. I feel like it kills a little bit of build diversity, because I look at all these like, oh, look at all these damage increases and stuff, and like all this, oh, I want to kind of build that. That's gonna be really fun. But if you do, you're trolling because you're not building defensively. Like, I don't like that personally. That's my only gripe I really have against ARPGs and or Last Epoch in general. It's just kind of like, I would rather have fun than like make sure you're building defensive, otherwise every enemy will one-shot you. But that does bring us to our passives. Take note of all the dexterity. We will be stacking dexterity like a motherfucker. That is going to come into play later, mostly because of two things. One, if you go down into Falconer, not only does it give you 12 dexterity, but your Falcon gets +1 flat additive melee damage, not a percentage increase, flat +1 melee damage additive per 4 dex that you have. So right out the gate, the second you get this, your Falcon already has +3 melee damage, which is pretty cool. Which is pretty nice. But yeah, it's gonna make your Falcon hit hard. So we're definitely going to be focusing dex quite a bit. So the beginning here, again, you could go for things like increased attack speed and just +1 additive physical damage up to 8 and or 24%. Well, and 24%, not and or you don't get to choose. And 24% increased attack speed. You could go for that, and since we're going to be using Flurry, every third attack on Flurry could do 100% increased damage. You could go into these, but there's so many really, really strong defensive talents at the beginning of this tree that is very, very useful. I'm going to be going into the dex and health, because again, we want to stack dexterity. This is going to give +2 damage to my Falcon. Plus, every 1 point of dexterity increases all of your abilities, because just about every single rogue ability, especially the ones in Falconer, all scale for dexterity, because explosive draft dexterity, net dexterity, aerial assault dexterity, dive on dexterity, and falconry dexterity. Every single ability you have is going to scale off dexterity. So every 1 point of dexterity you get increases its damage by 4%. So that's pretty nice. So you get, and also gives you 4 dodge rating. So you know, we are going for dodge, so that does also help with that. So 8 dex, 40 health, very nice. 80 dodge rating, because again we're stacking dodge rating like crazy, and 40% poison resistance. Just a flat 40% poison res is just right out the gate, early levels. Doesn't hurt. And then evasion. Evasion is going to combo later with another ability in the Falconer tree, but this one is pretty nice. Whenever you are moving, you just take a flat 25% reduced damage against every damage source. Pretty crazy. You take a quarter less damage from everything if you're just walking. Very strong ability. Highly recommend picking up. And of course, the percentage increase of dodge rating is very nice. And this one I just like to get. I don't know if it's since we're not going to be dual wielding when I'm doing Twin Blade, but if you want to switch this maybe for agility, or maybe switch assassin if you want more glancing blow, dodge and parry, I don't know, but I really like sapping strikes every single attack. And remember, the increases we're getting to attack speed on a skill that costs 0 mana regenerates health and mana, 16 health and 8 mana per attack, and we attack fast. And as you saw at the beginning there, those 3 auto attack things with like Cinder Strikes, Puncture, and Flurry all cost 0 mana. So every time we hit anything when you use that ability, that's 16 health. It's really great for early game. That's going to stack with some stuff we have later for health leech and regen and just flat health gain on attack and stuff. But also the 8 mana per attack is going to be very vital because again we don't have a lot of mana, and Falconer Falconry takes half of our mana. So a way to regenerate our mana bust by auto attacking is going to be very nice. It's going to be very, very nice. But that's all we take here in the base class. Now, of course, some honorable mentions. There are some things and Marksman and Blade Dancer that could be very useful for this build if you wanted to switch some things around. I just couldn't feel like losing anything in the Falconer tree. But these are options. Obviously here you get dexterity and dodge rating debuff hit on enemies, which is very nice. Increased crit chance as well as crit vulnerability chance, which is going to be very, very nice, as well as more crit strike avoidance, which we won't need, but it is an option. Excuse me. But the main one that you can get here on Marksman is concentration. Now, concentration usually works when you're ranged with either throwing abilities or bow abilities and attacks. However, if you're dodging a lot of hits, it's like if you are hit by an enemy within 4 meters, you lose your concentration. Now this stacks up to 8, so 8 times 15, that's a lot of percent of increased damage while you have concentration. And if enemies aren't hitting you, say 25 to 30% of the time, you can actually keep that up for a while. However, and it also increases your dodge rating as well. However, reduce the cooldown by 45%, which means that it takes about 2 seconds for concentration to come back. So if you do get hit, next pack, it's already back up. I mean, it would be anyways, but like maybe even in the middle of a fight, if you're just not taking hits, it's back up. So could be useful. But also increase your percentage dodge rating and movement speed with concentration, even if you're just going into a fight with increased movement speed and dodge rating in between packs and starting a fight. This could be very useful. Also, a Blade Dancer, obviously dexterity and glancing blow, which is really nice. Glancing blow, if you didn't notice, is right there. If something hits you and it becomes a glancing blow because it triggers your chance, you take 35% less damage on that attack. Which, if you stack with the fact if that happens when you're moving, just do the math, that's a fuckload less damage. So glancing blow is really good, for sure. But Dust Shroud, you have a chance to gain Dust Shroud when you are hit, and just a flat 80 plus 80 health. It also doesn't hurt, but each stack of Dust Shroud adds 50 dodge rating and 5% chance to receive glancing blow. And increase melee attack speed and Dust Shroud chance when you're hit. So these are definitely honorable mentions. Also here, obviously, you can put a bunch of your dodge chance into glancing blow, but you can no longer dodge. Like, this is also a really viable section that you can go into, especially for this build. But for me personally, I feel like I can't ignore these Falconer skills. Like, we're already not taking a lot in here, and I still feel like I just can't get rid of any of them. I don't know, I enjoy them. Here, health and dodge rating, straightforward. You have a chance to gain haste and do more damage with haste when your Falcon hits something. Honestly, I think Raptor's Wing needs a buff or needs to be changed, because you can get better baseline shit. Like, you get a 10% chance to gain haste when your Falcon hits something, and you do 5% more damage while you hasted. That is like laughable based off of you have a 25% chance when you hit something to gain haste, and you get increased damage per 1% increased movement speed, and that goes up to 1%. So per 1% increased movement speed, you have 1% increased damage. Again, we're gonna get up to, like, what was it, 70 some increased movement speed. That's like 70 plus increased percent damage. Like, this is fucking trash in comparison. It doesn't scale and it gives you a 10% chance. Like, Raptor's Wing either needs to be buffed or removed or changed. Like, it just, since this is in baseline, I don't understand this talent. It's like, excuse me. Of course, increase minion damage because that's what we're doing here, but also gives my Falcon an increased baseline crit chance. So it makes my Falcon's base crit chance 10%. It's really nice, unless it's lower for minion, but not other than that. This one increases dodge rating and maximum health gained as endurance threshold by 15%. That is very important, and we'll get to that later. That's actually makes us decently tanky. It's pretty cool, but more dodge rating as well. 8 dexterity and the 5-point bonus that it makes this passive right here not just for melee damage but also for throwing damage, and aerial assault and dive bomb will both give opportunities for my Falcon to do throwing damage, so that will give it that passive as well, which is really cool, and the dexterity is nice. This one just flat increased dodge rating and increased mana regen, but every time I dodge I gain 5 mana, which is nice. Of course it's on 1 second cooldown, but that's not that long of a cooldown. So it's not like if you run in a pack of 5 enemies and they all miss you at once, you get 25 mana. It doesn't quite work that way. It's only going to hit on one of those per second, but still, that mixed with the other one is a good way for us to get mana back, because again, we don't got a lot of mana in this build. Ignoring these, what I do really like about Falconer, what they did with Falconer is that you can literally do almost any build. You want to do it with bow, you can do it with bow, no problem. You want to do it with throwing weapons, you can do it with throwing weapons, no problem. Let's do here connected with throwing weapons. If you want to do it with like dual wield with one hand, or the 5-point bonus one hand and shield, you could totally do one-handed shield. There's even a block chance over here with that and gaining health on block and stuff. You can do dual wield, one-handed shield. You can do two-handed. It has bonuses for two-handed sword, for staff, for spear. Like, I love it. Now, obviously, we don't need any of these, so we're not going to take them. But since we're doing it with spear, we get 50% increased damage with two-handed weapon and plus 1 flat additive damage per 10 dex. That's going to be really nice for us. So we maxed that one out for that, because that's one of the only damage ones we're taking in out of all this. Like 1, 2, that's technically damage, 3, 4. Yeah, we have, out of all these nodes that we have, only 4 of them is damage. So we're going to max that one out to get as much, soak as much damage out of that as we can. And this one, this 5 points into this one is very important. I could do more, but I don't really need the increased damage and spear because it's only giving me 6% per point. It's not really that much. Bleed chance, the half of my attacks are going to bleed. That's very nice. That's a little extra added damage. Not really important, so we're not going to get that to 80% like we could. The important part of this is that 5-point bonus. Either we use flurry or puncture, like I mentioned earlier. The range of puncture is increased by 60% with the spear. Really cool. Again, this scales with 3 different types of two-handed weapons, but they really wanted to hone in and focus on spear. Very interesting. I wonder why they made that choice, but I kind of like it. I think it's kind of cool. But the important one for us is, as I mentioned earlier, that we're going to get 30%. Increase flurry attack speed with the spear by 30%. That's a huge chunk of attack speed right there. Very nice. Moving on to the next tree. Area skills, we're not really using many area skills besides dive bombs. I don't care. This one's is more flat damage for your Falcon, but like I think with the percentage damage that we have with our Falcon that you'll see later, we're fine. We don't need flat additive damage to that as well. It's throwing involved. We're also not going to block or try to go glancing blow yet, but if we need to switch our block chance over to glancing blow, because block chance ain't doing shit, well, here's the 5 points. We can switch from here to here to make that happen. So there you go. This one's just flat health, as well as every 10 seconds, one of our abilities, which is kind of random how this works. Like, it's like a specific ability will become active, and when you use that ability, or will be enhanced, I guess you could say, not really active because it will be active, but it will become enhanced. When we use that ability, we gain 3 stacks of Silver Shroud. Really cool. Plus just the 30 plus health. If you don't know what Silver Shroud does, Silver Shroud means that your next attack has a 100% dodge chance, no questions asked. You will dodge the next attack that comes your way. It consumes, once you dodge that attack, it consumes every stack of Silver Shroud that you have to give you 100 ward per stack. So whenever we use the ability, every 10 seconds we get 3 stacks of Silver Shroud. We'll automatically dodge the next attack, no questions asked. Which we can also use to try to, like, if you see a specific boss ability coming at you that can be dodged, because some of their AoEs cannot, you can just push that button that you know is going to activate it, and boom. Don't get hit by that ability, and gain 300 ward. Very nice ability there. This one here, just more dexterity, increased armor, and increased dodge rating. All just nice stats all around. More dodge rating and a 25% chance that every time we dodge to throw down caltrops, and those caltrops do have a 100% chance to bleed BT dubs. This one I might switch. Depends how much damage do caltrops do, especially since we don't have throwing damage increase. How much damage is that going to do? No clue. If it does doo-doo water bullshit, then maybe we don't do it. And maybe we don't do it. But yeah, maybe we switch it to something else. But if it does, maybe we keep it. Who knows? Maybe we keep it around. Intuitive connection might be a required 1-point wonder. I do not know. I do not know what this ability here means. Falcon Strikes and Dive Bomb are now instant cast. Additionally, Falcon Strikes and Dive Bombs have a longer cooldown. Now, Falcon Strike is, of course, when I tell my pet to go attack stuff, and Dive Bomb is the jump. What? What do you mean instant cast? I don't know exactly what that means. Like, is it like for falconry, it's like I push the button and my character like stops in place and it's like go attack, and my pet stalls for a second, then swoops and it does an attack, and if I get that, all of a sudden it's just like push, boom, it happens. Like, is it like, is that what that means? Dive Bomb, instead of my falcon doing it's like, let me think about it for a second, okay, then I Dive Bomb. But with that, it's like, what does that mean? So we'll have to use these abilities with falconry and Dive Bomb to figure out if that's even something worth putting a point in. If so, then we just maybe move one off a funnel soon here and put it on there or something. Who knows? But I think the increased cooldown either needs to be increased by 5% at the very minimum, or just removed. Because I don't know if y'all are very good on your percentages, but 5% is a laughable joke. Again, I have a huge feeling that Falcon Strikes is supposed to have some kind of cooldown. How long that is, no idea. 5% could be like drastic. If it's like a 30-second cooldown or something, then like 5% is actually possibly noticeable. Dive Bomb has a 7-second cooldown. 10% of that would be a 0.7 additional second cooldown. So instead of 7 seconds, 7.7 seconds, which would be noticeable-ish. 5% is 0.35 seconds. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm going to really feel the difference between 7 seconds and 7.35 seconds. I don't think I'm going to really give a singular fuck. So I don't know why that 5% is even on there in the first place. But again, maybe that's going to make like Falconer have an additional like 1 to 2 second cooldown. Even then, I don't think I'll care too much. But I just don't really think it should. I just don't think it should be attached, or it needs to be more. If you're gonna add a punishment to it, then it needs to be more than 5%. Why not just make it 1%? Be like, oh no, I don't know. But we'll have to see if the instacast means anything, or if it's like I can live with those taking like a split second to do something. I don't know. We'll see. Next, this one is going to get pretty disgusting when you find out how much dexterity we're running in this build. So I get just 30% increased damage flat. My minion just gets 30% increased damage flat to all sources. And a portion of my Falcon's damage, I know that's damage, so that means damage from auto attacks, from Falcon strikes, from aerosol burst, from dive bomb burst, and jump. Every single time my Falcon does any form of damage, it's going to give health to me. Per point, not 2 points, not 4 points, per point of dexterity. So that means every 10 dexterity we get, it gives us 1% of the damage it does as health. You haven't seen my dex yet. That's gonna get nuts. That's gonna get nuts, man. Anyways. Then of course we're going for crit chance, so max crit chance for both myself and my minion and crit mult and all that good stuff. 6 armor per 2 dex, and every time my Falcon hits anything recently, which recent in this game means within the last 4 seconds, I gain 2% increased armor stacking. I would imagine endlessly, but you know it's gonna keep dropping off those stacks every 4 seconds, so it's probably only gonna be able to get up to maybe 4 to 6 charges depending on use of the abilities and whatnot. Maybe a few more, give or take, before it starts falling back down. So that's still probably a good 10 to 16% armor increase at certain points in the fight. That could be pretty good. And then here, one of the most overpowered fucking passive points in the game. I did see that marksmen can get it here as well, as we talked about crit avoidance. But as far as I know from any other class, pretty sure rogues are the only ones that get crit avoidance and up to 35% in their passives. Dumb. Because that means with that and a blessing, we don't have to put crit avoidance on any piece of gear at all to get 100%. I'm sorry. Did someone say nerf? I don't know. Anyways, but also, every time we crit, we gain 21 health. That of course stacks onto the 16 we get, and also the 10 plus healing bonus from Flurry. So if it was just flat 10, 16, 21, as almost 50 health per crit, and we're gonna be critting quite a bit. So that's a lot of health for gain right there, plus crit avoidance. Someone say broken talent, but that's, I guess, why it's at the end here. Glancing blow, we don't need a glance blow. But I think this is damage over time and poison chance. Don't care about that. I don't need the additional potion slots, whatever. But increased haste effect and increased haste duration is nice, but I just don't think we truly need it. Just having haste in general pretty easily in this, movement speed pretty easily in this build in general is just going to be nice already, so we don't really need that. Caltrops probably fail to increase damage. Yeah, I don't care. And this is the one I was talking about with the slow, increased slow duration, as well as your damage and more damage to slow targets per stack of slow they have on them. There could be some pretty cool build with that, but that's not what we're going to be going. And the piece de resistance, more movement speed, more dodge rating, more damage while moving, less damage I should say when moving, more of that, more of less. Super nice. And whenever my Falcon hits an enemy recently, which is in the last 4 seconds, that effect doubles. So that's 12 to all of those. So with glancing blow, this would be crazy. But just almost all the time, if we're just running around enemies and my Falcon hits something, we take 37% less damage while we're moving. Almost at all times. 31 minimum, 37 maximum. Just flat, no damage taken from that. Just for walking. That's nuts. That is absolutely nuts. So we're going to want to try to focus on moving while certain abilities and stuff. or happening for like bosses and stuff, and just like moving while fighting in general instead of just trying to stand still and punch stuff. Moving's gonna be very important. So those are all the passive skills that we plan on going. Now for the crazy part, the reveal. So we're showing around average. Max is pretty crazy and whatnot. Health, I don't know how much health you're supposed to have, but we're going to harken back a little bit to the start of this, to how you should build for endgame. Now let me say how you should build for endgame. So obviously you want capped out resistances, which as you can see in the corner here, on average we have. If we're getting near max and everything, we're actually doing pretty well on our resistances. So even though they shred 75% of those, we're still taking decent amount of reduced damage. Minimum's not looking too pretty, but I imagine we'll be closer to average than anything else. 101 dexterity, by the way, keep that in mind. You just, if you glanced at that, keep that in mind. Also 70% dodge chance, but it's whatever, you know what I mean? So if I said, if there's just like only a 25 to 30% chance that they'll even hit us in the first place, you know, just think keep that one in mind. Anyways, so on every single piece of gear that you have that can have health on it, you should have health on it, because health is insanely vital in this game to not be one shot. Also, you need 100% crit avoidance, but that's fairly easy to get, especially playing a rogue. But even if you don't, maybe putting crit avoidance on one or two pieces of gear plus the blessing should cap you off, no problem. And resistances, you know, you're going to want to use idols as well as a few pieces to kind of help cap those up. But me, I am listening to part of those rules. I am putting health on every single item that I can put health on, because you can't put health on weapons. You can steal health on weapons, but you can't put health on weapons. And there's only a few pieces that can have hybrid health, which is flat plus additive health and percentage health, all mixed into one suffix. You should have that on every single piece of gear that you can. It's super powerful to have both bonus health and then increasing that by a percentage of that bonus health plus your already health that you already have is just really strong. And I do have hybrid health on everything they're going to have hybrid health on, and have health on every single piece. Now, what almost every single build guide will show you to do on every single piece, unless you need a suffix here or there for crit avoidance or capping off of resistance, you should have double stacks of health on everything. Again, it's kind of like killjoy of fun. You could use that for some fun stuff, but no, just build defensive because you need the health, otherwise you will be one shot. So 3,000 health is a little bit on the like bottom of what's acceptable for endgame. You should be trying to push. I mean, a certain builds, especially like primalists and stuff, are really good at, especially werebear primalists are really good at getting like 5,000 health. So you should be pushing probably closer to 4 to 5k, but we are playing a rogue, and rogues are very good at evading out of difficult situations just by their skills and their passives and stuff like that. So 3,000 is a decent number, but again, probably not optimal, definitely not min-max. So just note that half of this build is doing what I should for in-game. The other half is I just want to have fun and see if it'll work. So just keep that in mind. I also should probably have more vitality than 16. Well, what are you gonna do? Every point of vitality gives you 6% or 6 health, as well as 2 types of resistances, just because you didn't know. Okay, so this is the build we're going with. The important thing to note here is we'll go through all the end numbers here. So you remember how I said dexterity gives you 4% increased damage, as well as 4 dodge rating. Well, 400 dodge rating, as you can see, when we can get up to like 4,000, is not really a lot, but 400% increased damage on all these abilities that's pretty nice, man. that's pretty nice. Also, if we go back to certain abilities like our Falconer, whenever our Falcon kills an enemy or hits a boss, we gain health and mana. Now the 40 attributes is only going to give us like 3 mana. every time it attacks the boss, which is not a lot. That's something. It mixed with the 8 and the 5 from dodging. That's something. 8 from attacking, 5 from dodging, and the 13 or 12% increase mono regen. But per 2 attributes, we gain 1 health. Every time our Falcon kills something, for every kill our Falcon gets, which can be pretty easy with falconry, air assault, and dive bomb, because it all does do AoE damage. We gain like between 50 to 55. Actually, no, I think it's between 50 to 60. I think it's 60. 60 health every time it kills something, or just auto attacks something, or uses an ability on a boss or a rare enemy. We do have a lot of leech in this build, so while a lot of our defenses is kind of really banking on not getting hit in the first place, if we do get hit, we won't be crit, and we have a lot of ways to leech that back up like immediately. But going to the passives here, when we go through all this, I don't think that's here yet. No, this armor is not correct because it's only adding the armor from my 1 strength and from my gear, and the 12% from the evasion tactics, but it's not adding in the for some reason, I don't know why it's not shared with this, it's not adding the 6 per 2 dex, which is 300 extra armor. So this should be around 600, and that's going to increase by 2% per damage my pet does. So around flat armor mitigation should probably be closer to like 20%, and that should waver, my guess, depending on how many stacks we can get that up to. Roughly around, maybe capping around 25 to 30%. So we actually do block a lot more armor than, or more damage than this would have you believe. But that's not calculating correctly. Movement speed is 20, but as you've seen before, we have like 10% increase here from this for one reason, like 15% there, 10% there, 30% from haste. Like, we're gonna be zipping around the fucking map, which is really nice. Resistances, we'll talk about that later. 70% dodge stance, as I mentioned, we're gonna be dodging a lot. Offense, on average, we have about 42% crit. That's actually like way higher than that, but we'll get to that later because that gets fun. But on max, it's about 62%, which is pretty nice around max. So if it's between average to max, that means about 50% chance, like every other hit should crit. And again, we break over 100% increased attack speed on our spear. So like, we should be critting a lot in theory if they don't have crit avoidance, but it's actually way higher than 42. We'll get to that later. I did the numbers on the max number. It's pretty disgusting, but we'll get to that later because I figured out how the math works and whatnot. I used all these numbers to work that. So yeah. Defenses. Here's where that passive point comes into play that I mentioned before. That one. I was like, my brain just died for a second. That one. At lounges. Tenacity, as I say, you stack armor or health on everything, so getting increased maximum health as endurance threshold is pretty nuts. Because without that ability, and this is on minimum, this is on max, around the same number. Without that ability, if you don't know how endurance works, once you get to a certain percentage of health in your health pool, you'll start taking reduced damage based off of this number right here. So since we just have no additions to endurance, once we get to a certain health number, we start taking 20% reduced damage from all sources. Well, if that was 400, we probably get one shot regardless of that 20% damage reduction, right? if we got anywhere close to that level from a hit. But because of that one passive, out of our 3,000 health, whenever we're down to just a third, whenever we have 1,000 health, we start taking 20% reduced damage on top of the reduced damage we get for if we're moving. That means we're gonna take over half damage, which is just gonna be reduced. So this is pretty nice defenses. Again, we have more than just dodge going for us in this build, so that's a good thing. And 95% crit avoidance on average. If we get a max, you can get up to 105. So all we need is that blessing to be at least 65, between 65 plus, and we'll have 100%. So that's nice, but we'll get to that when we get to the blessings, which we'll do the blessings before the gear, and then we'll do the gear. I think that's how I want to do it. I don't know. We'll see. None of these other important. Minion damage, about 500% increased minion damage. But what's really important to note about that with all this damage, because we're not going to have pretty much any damage gains besides on our necklace and on our belt. But everything else is not really going to be damage gain. It's either going to be dodge, dex, crit, etc. What's important to note is that every single one of these skills, flurry, falconry, well, okay, not every single one. These two are not doubling up, but all these are dex. But falconry, aerial assault, and dive bomb are all minion skills. Minion. So not only is the minion skill being increased by 500, but also 400 on the dex. And if you look at certain skills, I don't know if all of them say that, but I know falconry does. Per point of dex, 4% increase minion damage. That's the scaling on that is minion damage. That's just increased damage. That's just increased damage, but this one increases minion damage. But so all of those abilities is increased by 400% on top of the 500% because it's a minion ability. So all those three abilities, those are increased by 900% damage. So even with no damage on these pretty much whatsoever, those abilities are still gonna fucking hurt. So it's really nice. It's really, really nice. And it says, yeah, it says base is 5, but it's not adding in that 5 stat passive increase. So this is actually I believe 10%, might even be 12%. 12% crit chance on her. Well, actually, it should be more because that's 36. But I think it should be more from maybe certain passive in there. But yeah, but at least around 12% crit chance. So I do have healing effectiveness, but I don't know what healing effectiveness does. I could look that up later. But yeah. All right, so those are all of our stats. For blessings, we just went pretty simple. Increase unique item drop rate because this is technically not BIS. It's not our best in slot, but like all purple is good enough to push in-game stuff. But you know, with legendary power, I don't remember what it's called. With the legendary thing, let me look at the uniques real fast. Is it power? Potential. Okay. Sorry. With legendary potential, certain legendary or certain unique items would probably be stronger than this, especially if we can get legendary potential 4 and pop all 4 pieces onto onto a unique item. Would really be nice. All 4 suffixes prefixes. My words escape my brain. But yeah, the suffixes and prefixes onto a unique item would be much stronger, so I just want the increased unique item drop rate to try to target farm that stuff better. There's a lot of really good unique rings that for the rogue or for this build specifically. So for this blessing, I decided to go with increased ring drop rate, but also two-handed weapon would not be a bad idea either. Potentially increased crit strike chance because yes, please. But I'm sure once we get to certain percent crit strike chance, that might be better somewhere else. But two-handed spear drop rate because again, I want this spear specifically, so we'll see what happens. With Lagon, lightning res to help cap off lightning, because lightning is one of our weaker stats, or weaker resistances, as you can see. So try to cap that off for free. Increase two-handed spear shard drop rate, get more shards for my spear because I have some rare shards that I want to put on there. Of course, the the most important one ever, up to 70% critical strike avoidance from Arena Dragon's mono. That plus our passive, if we can at least get the 65, we have six numbers in between 65 to 70. 6, 7, 70. I can do the math. To drop, so we can have 100%. So if we can get that upper number, then we don't literally need crit strike avoidance on any piece of gear. Period. Which is really nice. Increase class specific shard drop rate, so why not? Physical resistance from the Age of Winter to just have free capped out physical res potentially, or at least close to, and increase percentage dodge rating because I like that. So that's all of our blessings here. Now we'll go into our equipment before we go into our idols. Now, what's really important when you're building this build, when you're leveling with this build, a lot of the stuff you can see in the equipment is probably not going to be important until late game passives and skills being completely level 20'd out. I don't have any plus to any of my skills. Some of that might be really useful on some of those skills, but in all honesty, like, I feel like where I have all my skills with the passive points that I have in those each of those skills, I don't feel like I need more levels to it. But if you feel like you do, feel free to switch something out with it. But I mean, I don't really have a problem with that. But also, if you don't have these specific pieces of gear, and I'll explain why these specific choices were made, then you're going to want to switch these idols with resistances to help cap off certain resistances, and whatever else you can get with those resistances, usually vitality or something like that, is really helpful while you're leveling, until it's like, okay, if I take off this idol, I'll still have over 75% resistance because of other sources. Then you can start swapping them out for the idols that we have. Also, I don't have any resistance on any of my gear except for one ring, I believe. I don't have a suffix being a resistance on any of the gear. So that's why almost every piece of gear I chose specifically to help max out my resistances without me needing any idols or suffixes being used for resistances. So that is specifically why I chose this gear, but if you don't mind switching some things around or whatnot, then you can always switch to maybe some better pieces, but that's why I chose the gear that I did. Starting with the top one, Poison Res, with the passive that we have. If we can get up to the close to 30%, that'll almost cap off your Poison Res right out the gate. And Poison Resistance is not really one that I care about either. So just about on all of these, we're going to be getting Dexterity where we can, because again, that's how we get to 100 Dexterity, that's how we get 400% increased damage, as well as something I forgot to mention. Because of the passive, for every 4 Dex, we get +1 to our bird's damage, to melee damage. It gets +25 flat melee damage on top of the 500%, by the way. A lot of damage. Our bird's gonna be hitting like a fucking truck. So that's also why we're stacking Dexterity here as well. And Dexterity doesn't, it just gives dodge rating and damage. So Dexterity, the tier 6 or tier 7 that you get in these can alter to whatever you want. Like, on all honesty, and most of these, especially since I'm not doing double stacking of health, which I believe I mentioned is exactly what you should do in almost every build guide, having the tier 6 or tier 7 and increased health, if you can get it, probably way more optimal than what I'm doing, but again, I'm having fun. But I would be happy with a tier 7 in pretty much any of these stats. It's just for this specific piece to help push specific stats. This is why I chose tier 6 or tier 7. Tier 7 obviously in this, because you're building for the best scenario in different ways, and that's why I did it. So tier 7 Dex, which gives us 13 16 Dex. Increased crit strike chance with Flurry. That's going to come into play when we get to the idols. Why is that I actually have way higher crit chance with Flurry with my auto attacks than 40 to 60. It's actually disgusting, but we'll get to that later. Dodge rating, because I want dodge rating on most gear that I can get, just to get that 70%, 70 to 73%, which will also be more, but we'll get to there. We'll get to there, and of course increased health. Over to the necklace, up to 40% physical and necrotic res. yes, please. Because yes, please. Minion damage. Amulets and rings have really high scaling minion damage. That's why I'm kind of going with tier 7 minion damage. But of course, anything else would be viable, especially the health and or dodge rating. Increased physical damage. This is the only physical damage that I'm giving to myself just to help give a little extra boost, since I don't really have any increases in physical damage myself. That's not from purely dexterity. Health, of course, just a bunch of extra plus health and percentage dodge rating. We're going to be jumping back and forth between flat dodge rating and percentage dodge rating, just like flat health and percentage health, just to help push that number higher by giving a flat number and then increasing that percentage by percentage amounts. So these, the chest piece. This one I got just because it has percentage crit chance and dodge rating, but there might be some, I don't know if there's a better chest out there. This one, if you need help with the physical resistances, crit avoidance, it's not a bad choice. It's flat elemental, well, that's a different one specifically, but endurance might not hurt, have a higher percentage endurance, so instead of taking 20% reduce, we could have 28% reduced damage. That's really nice. Since that's just an additive, it's not an increase. Very nice. Poison res, if you're going for more damage over time. Poison bleed stuff, right there. So obviously there's different types of ones that can be really good, but since we specifically want crit and dodge, I went for crit and dodge. Dexterity again. This one was what I was talking about earlier with that dodge rating. I gained about 182 to 240 dodge rating if I haven't hit recently. There might probably is a better prefix than that, but I kind of like the thought of like try not to get hit, but if I do get hit, it should be harder to hit me the next time. I did kind of enjoy that. Now of course 240 is not a whole lot when you're looking at between 3.8 to 4k dodge rating, but hopefully that also gets increased by my percentage increases as well, but who knows. So hopefully that would do more than just a 1 or 2%, but you never know. Of course, increased dodge rating, and if you can get it, tier 7 percentage health, because on a chest piece the numbers are much higher than on some other gear, and that 30 to 30% increased percentage of max HP is hot. It's really nice, really good. And same thing with dodge rating percentage, because the numbers are so high on chest pieces. I want this Dragon Slayer glaive in particular for my spear. Now again, as I mentioned before, it does have a negative 6% attack speed off the cuff, because it does have a 0.94 attack rate. However, when you increase that by 100%, who knows how crazy that's going to get. So it should not be a big deal. But the reason I wanted this one specifically is almost purely because it has over plus 100 melee damage, which is quite a bit, but also 75% increased fire res. Like, not a percentage, you just, if you get this type of spear, which I think it is a decently rare spear to acquire, I think you have to target farm it in a specific mono zone, but if you can get it, you have capped fire res. Just no questions asked. It's pretty nice, and that is not a increase melee crit strike, that is a base. If you get the 7%, your base goes up by 7%, which is why this max is so fucking high, because when you crank the base up to 12%, that starts scaling exponentially. It's very nice. So this is a really good spear, but I think it's pretty rare to get it. Additional flat melee increase or added damage, so that we have a chance to get over 100 plus 150 melee damage, which is really nice. Also scales with that passive that we give our pet increased damage when a certain condition is met. A certain flat increased damage. It's gonna make it hit even harder with its 5 to 900% increased damage. Critical stroke molt as the tier 7, purely just because that was over 130 to 160% increased crit molt, which is why we have. So the base for crit multiplier is 200. Crits do double damage, right? We're doubling that double damage. It's fucking gross. If it works the way it sounds like it works, fucking gross. Just putting that one out there. Also, because the percentage was so high, I decided to go for the chance to shred armor. Every shred armor stack that you put on someone, which stacks indefinitely, BT dubs, reduces 100 armor that the enemy has. So we have around 600 armor. Keep that in mind before we start taking true damage. Essentially, so I don't think that's what it's considered in this game, but essentially that's what it is. If we get the 300 or more, even if we don't, 200, flat 200 is really good, but if we get 300 or more, that means every single auto attack is applying 3 stacks of armor shred, which means they're losing 300 armor. That means if I hit me twice, I'm taking true damage at that point. Like, obviously enemies will have way higher armor than that, but still, that's a ridiculous amount of shred per hit. And again, over 100% increase attack speed. That, in all theory, again, if everything works, compounds the way I think it's going to, that's fucking disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting numbers right there. Alright, I think we're about an hour and a half in, but like, so understand, I'm super excited about this build. I spent hours on this yesterday, and I'm spending hours on it today to discuss it. Like, it was so much fun putting all this together, and I'm really excited to play Falconer, especially with this build and seeing it come to life and hoping that this works the way I'm hoping it will later in the game. And I'm going to be recording it and putting it out, by the way, this exact build as we see it progress throughout the game and going through the story and seeing all the changes and the new trade systems that they got at the end, or self-found systems they got at the end. Still don't know which one I'm going to go for, but I'm kind of leaning over straight, but we'll see. But yeah, it's just like they say about PoE. If it doesn't take like 3 hours to explain the build, it's not a good build. I don't know if anyone says that last part, but like, often they'll say like, yeah, this is a build that's going to take me several hours to explain it. So here we are. Here we are. I just love the nitty gritty of this stuff. It's why I love character creation and D&D. Like, I just love this little nitty gritty number stuff and theory crafting. It's super exciting to me. So hopefully you're still here listening because it's super exciting to you as well. And of course, forget it. Good. Even if we don't get the top, if we get around the top number 29. That's an additional 30 health on hit. Now, what was the number we were at already? We'll find it here, but I just remembered something. So you remember how I told you to pay attention to something? For every 10 decks was 1% leech, we got 100. So 10% of all damage my Falcon does directly to me. 900% increased damage, by the way. Just, you know, again, the leech on this build is going to be gross. So we got 21 on crit. This is also the other one will come into play here. And this will be even grosser later. Around this year. Per point of dexterity, 4% increased healing. 400% increased healing, not overall, just purely on this number on crit. That means 40 health on crit. So 40 health on crit, 30 per auto attack. We're at 70. Going back to going back to baseline here. 16 on that. 30, 70, 86. Oh, I was in the right place. I was just in the wrong one. And 21. So I don't think we had that. Yeah, it's about every crit, which again, our crit is going to be way higher than 40 or 60. I promise you that. Unless they have crit avoidance. On every crit, which in theory might be every auto attack if it works the way I think it's going to work, or the way I hope it's going to work. That means just baseline per auto attack, 100% increase by attack speed, which is, I keep saying that because of how nutty it is, because like my Primalist, I made the Hurricane Werebear build, so much fun, by the way, a lot of fun. Like, I get excited when I get like I think I maxing out with all my bonuses at like a Frenzy stacks. I don't even remember. But I think I'm getting like a, plus that's 15. I think I'm getting like a 40 or 50% increase attack speed, and it's like, yeah, this is awesome. We're talking 100. Now, of course, it's not the same attack speed, I think, because the spear is a little bit slower than I think a staff is, if I'm not 100% positive about that one. But yeah, that's a lot of attacks. Pretty much almost 100 health guaranteed per hit, and 10% from my pet, while taking 40% less damage while I'm moving. Just putting that out there. If this all combos the way I think it is, it's gonna be nuts. And we haven't even got to the gloves yet, which is gonna make that even closer. So continuing on here, that's all the stats on the weapon here. Just a nice flat 150 plus physical damage, which is just gonna be really nice to wrap it all up. And base crit being increased by 47% is also super fucking sweet. Down to the belt. With belts, there's not really any resistances or anything you can really get. I can show you real fast. You either have, your only option is, if you don't want mana, literally your only option is armor in 4 slots or no armor in 5 slots. It's really the best you can do. So I'll have some more armor and have 1 less potion. Totally cool with that. Increased minion damage. This is the only instance of increased damage for myself. Just like I said, with this is physical. We also got some fire damage because besides dexterity, I have no other scaling on explosive trap, and that only is going to scale off of dexterity and fire damage and or throwing damage, but we're not doing throwing damage. So a little bit of extra 40 to hopefully around 50 to 60% increase on that fire damage to help give it a little extra oomph for my AoE explosions. Which, by the way, if you haven't been paying attention, I have a lot of AoE explosions. When I auto attack, like at least half the screen's gonna explode if the area increases. For fire trap works the way I think it does. Dive bomb not only is a nice little area jump. I don't think it's gonna be huge. I think it's gonna be pretty small, but still area jump. But beforehand, my bird's gonna shoot out feathers all around it. And arrow assault when I land at a location. More AoE shoot out from my bird. 3 AoE abilities, and I think Falconer. I don't know if it's just gonna hit one creature in that zone multiple times, or if it's going to jump around, or if it's everything in the zone, but that also has a possibility to be more AoE. So tons of AoE, and then the 140, 150% increased boss damage, flurry, constantly critting for single target. I think we got all our bases covered. Anyways, so that's why we're getting fire damage. Okay, again, hybrid health, because we can get hybrid health on that piece. So we got hybrid health, and tier 7 on hybrid health. I'm a dreamer. Maybe with the auction house system that might be more attainable, but I have a huge feeling that anything that's hybrid health on the auction house, because hybrid health is so desirable, especially if it's tier 7, it's going to sell for like several 100 million gold. So I imagine people are going to be assholes like they are in World of Warcraft with auction houses. So hopefully last Epoch developers put a cap on how much you can put certain things on based off tiers and item levels, but we'll see how that goes. They've been really smart with everything else about the whole faction thing, so hopefully they continue to go strong with that and don't let people just go fucking wild on what prices are. But if we can get a tier 7 on the hybrid health, that would be super fucking cool, as well as percentage dodge rating. Ivory ring for the necrotic resistance, because yes please. More dexterity, minion damage, health. Again, tier 7 health would be awesome, but I am a dreamer. And since cold res, as you can see here, is like the lowest, hardest res for me to get, next to void. Void was also a really hard one to get. Putting that, hopefully getting around 40-45% cold res on the ring would be really nice. It's the only, I think it's the only slot we go that has resistances on the suffix, so really nice. Other ring, increased crit chance, because why not? More dexterity, more minion damage, health, just like the last one, just flat health, because I don't think you can get percentage health on a ring, but I don't fully remember. And just a bunch of dodge rating, because why the fuck not? Over tier to gloves, where we get a little bit gross again. Again, this one I just put it on dodge just to help boost my dodge numbers, but again, if you can get tier 7 hybrid health, do it. But more dexterity. These gloves specifically for the void resistance, because as I mentioned, void was really hard for me to get resistances for, so that's going to really help out with that. Hybrid health, dodge rating, and 5% of my melee damage, which is going to be doing double crit damage, on top of the fact that over 100 health is being absorbed per auto attack. Give me 5 to 6 more % of that leached as health. Good amount of leech on this one, and 10% for my pet's damage. Like, again, if this goes according to plan, if you don't, kind of like PoE, when I was running through the campaign of PoE, if you don't one-shot me, good luck. Good luck killing me. As long as I can hit you, good luck killing me. Move over to boots, the Hyborian for that cold res, and also it not only does it give a chance to give really good or really shitty, but a chance to give really good cold res, but it also has some of the highest increase in movement speed out of boots. So I went with the cold res. Oh, also, speaking of not optimal and not min max, for belts, usually the one you want to go for is the one of the stats. I don't remember if it's a prefix or a suffix. I want to say prefix, but it could be a suffix. I'm not 100%. I think it's prefix because it's better. I can find it real fast. It's not that hard to find. This is the one almost every single belt's going to tell you to get. Not only do you get ward on a potion use like you do for this, but also it completely cleanses any ailment on you whatsoever. That is like what you probably should go if you're pushing for endgame, like without question. Is if anything, I would say get rid of the increased fire damage for that. But you know, again, we're having fun. We're not going for optimal, but that would be optimal if in case you're wondering. Anyways, back to boots, dexterity, of course. This one we're taking vitality just because I don't think any of the other prefixes were like super sick, amazing, awesome. So I was like, okay, we could skip it for vitality on this one. Try to get tier 7 vitality to make up for the fact that we have no vitality. But the 16-ish vitality is giving me an extra 100 health. So that is pretty decent. Oh, that's what I put over here. Yeah, 96 health for the vitality. So push the tier 7 because vitality is pretty easy to get tier 7 on. Tier 6 and tier 7 on. And make up for the fact that you don't have vitality in any other gear. So there's that. But of course, again, if you gear the hybrid health, probably better. And percentage dodge rating. For this one, this is a real gamble here. But if you can get closer to that 100% increased crit strike rating, this is going to be nice. Also, by the way, to take it note that additional 3 to 6 health gain on crit. Get on my level. And just like rings and amulets, relics have really high increased wounding damage, so try to tier 7 that. I'm going to try to tier 7 that if I can. Again, void res was my weakest, so I did actually have another one with void res on it. Only 2 suffixes, I believe, on my gear with resistances on it. Dexterity, health, etc, etc, etc. So that does it for the flat gear. For idols, again, getting health, getting either health, maybe double health, and resistances, especially while you're leveling and whatnot, are probably going to be better for you in the long run. But if you get to a point where you can take off all the resistances, I think these are fun. So starting with the biggest one going down to the smallest one, we have the huge shadow idol. Increase my crit strike chance in general and give me up to 20% all elemental reses. Really nice to help give a little extra wiggle room to those elemental resistances. Then down to the what are these called? The larger ones. And these ones are where the disgusting is going to come into play, because you remember that headpiece with flurry specifically. Yeah, let's have some fun. 20 to 54% increased critical strike chance with flurry, and 3 to 8 health gained when you dodge. I have 3 of these, exact same things. Now, of course, you can always switch the suffix to something that's probably could be more useful to you. We are doing armor shred, so increased armor shred duration could really stack that up to make you do a lot more damage. If you're having a hard time with resistances, gain the all elemental resistances on it would probably be more beneficial to you. If you want more fire damage, or you're going for bleed or poison, physical damage over, but that would be bleed, so not poison. Physical damage over time. Ward, if you're using shift, ward gain on shift. There's a lot of things that would probably be better, but since I want to dodge, the thought of getting up to 24 additional health every time I don't get hit, it was just too much fun to pass up. So these three, those will come back to play later. This one just flat plus additional health and crit strike chance on all these three. And the last one, there's really no good prefixes. Maybe health regen. I don't think I have anything that can stun. Dodge rating obviously would be ideal for this build. Because it's the build we're going for. But like 4 to 12, like we have like 4,000. That won't even. That would be like maybe 0.1% increase on just one here. Like that probably would be 0.05% increase. Like it's not even dropping the bucket. So I don't think healing effectiveness affects that. Yeah, I don't think it has anything that tells me how healing effectiveness works. So I probably would only need to find a game or something. So I don't know how it works. I don't know if healing. I don't think healing it might affect potions. I think probably exactly what it affects. So more healing from potions, probably from health regen sources. I don't know if it does anything to leech and or health on hit. I seriously doubt it, but just in case it did, I popped it in there because there's really, besides health regen, there's really no good prefixes for small little items. So yeah, but also 80% increase physical damage as well. So just a little buff on that. So yeah. So yeah, that essentially is the build. Sorry it took me so long to go through it and explain it all, but that's why there's chapters and everything. Like, again, I don't know how viable this build will be. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about the crit. That's one thing I wanted to talk about, wrap up. But I think it's gonna be fun to be a Final Fantasy Dragoon, jumping it around, doing insane crits and not getting hit ever. And if you do get hit, instantly heal yourself back up in like 2 to 3 crits, guaranteed crits. That just sounds fucking disgusting. Now, I did the math because I figured out how the crit. I didn't forget about the crit. Okay, I didn't forget about the crit here. I did the math because I tried. I did the first time with the base because I went and looked at the game guide that tells you how the crit works. Pretty much increased is pretty much the same as any other percentage in tipping. It just goes on exactly. There's no diminishing returns or anything like that. Anyways, whew, my throat's getting all dry from talking for like 2 hours straight. Yeah, any percentage is a straight up percentage, no diminishing returns or anything like that. It's just the base is 5%, so 24% increase to 5% to 5 is very small. It's a very small number. But if you get like 100% increased crit chance, that would if your base is just 5, it would go from 5% crit chance to 10%. It works just as percentage just does. If you get 50%, it would be 2.5, so it would go from 5 to 7.5. So I did the numbers and I didn't get the same number. Because I tried adding up all the increase and then adding the flat onto there. It adds the flats together first and then increases that. So if we have 12% base crit and we get max on everything, all those percentages increase to that 12% base crit will come out to 62.12% crit chance. Now, here's what makes this crazier. Here's what makes this crazier. If we go back to Flurry, we increase that base for Flurry specifically, no other ability, but then again, we're not really critting with any other ability. I mean, some of these might crit, but like it's like one hit, whereas Flurry is constant strikes. It's increased by 6%. So that means our base, if we get the 7%, which since it's only 4 numbers, I just want to make sure I didn't get that wrong. There's only 4 numbers it could be. 7% is not that unobtainable. Might be hard to get with modifiers that you want and need or the right slots of force potential to get there. But 7% is not out of the ballpark. 6 to 7% relatively easy. So if you have 12%, that means Flurry, and only Flurry, Flurry's base crit is actually 18%. 18% base crit on Flurry. Add all those multipliers. Of course, I did the max, so average would be a little bit different, but still pretty high. It goes up by a lot when you're increasing 18% and adding that on. It goes up to quite a bit. Then if we get at least around 50 to close to 80, that is 50, 100, 150, 240% increased crit chance with Flurry on top of all these other ones, because this, as you read through here, this has nothing to do with Flurry. None of these are adding in my crit chance for Flurry, which is going to be my main crit source. So make the base 18 and add a potential of all these numbers plus 240%. I did the math for you. It's 136% chance to crit. So if we're getting near max, we're going to have easily over 100%. So even if they had 100% crit avoidance, I think that would stop us. But as long as they don't have 100, because I think it works by cutting things by that percentage instead of just meeting that number. So if it was 100, then we couldn't crit them regardless. But I don't think any creature does have 100, even if they did have crit avoidance on its stats. That doesn't tell us it has. So even if it had, say, 50%, that's still over a 50% chance to crit with Flurry. So, yeah, we're pretty much, when we get this set up, guaranteed to crit every fucking attack. Every fucking attack is almost a guaranteed crit, doing quadruple damage. If this number means what I think it means, doing quadruple damage and healing ourselves for like 100 plus 5 to 6% leech, and every time our Falcon hits a boss, we're getting like additional 60 health plus 10% of its 900% increased damage. So if all this is correct, and feel free to check me on this math and be like, well, no, see, because this works this way in last Epoch. Feel free to check me, but like, if all this works the way I think it does, if you don't one-shot me, which should be hard if you can't crit me, you have to get me close to, hope I'm not moving, and get me close to my endurance threshold and just one-shot me from there before I can leech back up. I feel like that's the only way you can do it. Right? Because once I'm on my last 1000 HP, which is quite a bit, maybe not at some parts of late game, but like it's quite a bit, I'm going to start taking 20% just flat damage reduction on top of my armor that I'm getting from my Falcon, and etc, etc. And if I'm moving, that number goes up to like 60% damage reduction. Like, guys, like, what are we doing here? Also, I also have other health healing sources from like popping my stacks, which makes me do increased damage, which makes me leech more. Like, So, yeah. And crit chance, from what I've seen, again, I can... Yeah, nothing here says crit strike has a cap in their game guide. So... and of course, at that point, if I do have 130% crit chance and there's no cap on that, or there's like next to no, if any, crit avoidance without the modifier on a monolith on enemies, at least at the current moment in the game, or at least on release, then it might be beneficial to remove some crit chance, do the math and whatnot, make sure you don't drop below 100%, but remove some crit chance on geared for more desirable pieces, and or possibly switching out some idols, though that is going to drop Flurry's crit chance by quite a bit if you do, so be careful with that, but maybe switching some on some pieces. That's the build. Sorry it took like 2 hours to explain, but like as you can see, and as you can probably tell by the excitement and the theory crafting, I'm blind, in my voice, I'm super excited about this build. It seems decently tanky, not the most HP, but enough to be survivable with all my just flat damage reduction and leeching and all that. Like, of course I have to get to those breaking points, but if you can, if I can put in the grind to get it, I think it's just gonna be absolutely shit. So come join me for my Dragoon Lancer with a Falcon ally. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see this power spikes as it goes along. I hope you guys are excited for at least as much as I am. I'm going to try to be releasing that content as fast as I can. So join me on that. Come check the channel for it. And thank you. If there's any super builds you're excited about, like this is a pretty cool one I thought about on the Witch and whatnot, drop me some comments. I'd love to chit chat about it. Tell me what you thought about the build, if you think it will work or not. We'll see. So, thank you for joining me. See you all next time.